Hey, so-called Oreos listeners, it's Mari here with a little PSA for you today. Since recording this episode almost 2 weeks ago, a lot of devastating things have occurred. During this episode, we lamented about the fact that the Black Lives Matter movement often feels like it's being co-opted by other people or other underrepresented groups to push alternative agendas. Since then, we have witnessed Number 45 continue to disrespect the Black community by announcing an upcoming rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma on Juneteenth. We have also seen his administration finalize a regulation that will erase protections for transgender patients against discrimination by doctors, hospitals, and health insurance companies, a move that was announced on the 4th year anniversary of the Pulse nightclub massacre and also in the middle of Pride Month. This is not only disgusting, but it's inhumane. These moves are calculated and deliberate, and citizens' civil rights are under attack. The killings of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Tony McDade, and so many others have spurred recent unrest in the United States. And during this time, the Trump administration has continued to purposefully put its citizens in harm's way. We're in the middle of a humanitarian crisis, period. And everyone should be in this conversation.
Another episode of the So-Called Oreos podcast, the podcast where we discuss all the awkwardness, hardship, and hilarity that comes along with society labeling you white on the inside and Black on the outside, also known as an Oreo. I'm Rachel Fowler, here with my co-hosts,
Janae,
Amari,
and Kia. We did it right.
I was like, I'm going in this time. It's time. Yay.
Before we begin, I just want to highlight, if some of you may notice the sound that may be different, we are calling through Skype and we are working to better our sound. So how is everyone doing? It's been a crazy week.
I feel excited. I feel excited for the future. I feel like we're seeing slow progress, which is good. And I'm honestly going to take every ounce of what white guilt has right now, and I'm just going to profit off that, to be honest.
I'm also feeling very okay. I actually, I don't know if I've ever said it, but I've been upstate with my parents for the past since COVID happened. And I went to a march in my hometown yesterday, and it was just really uplifting. There were like 2,000 people there. And it was all like young people, and it wasn't just people of color. It was like tons of white people were there too. And it was just like a really, really good moment. A little scary because everyone kind of just like forgot about COVID, which was a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. But it was just like good vibes all around.
Amari, how are you feeling?
I'm good. I feel like, my feelings and emotions kind of vary on the day to day. I think it's really easy to feel overwhelmed and like saddened by everything. But I don't want to be too like, I don't want to be, I guess, what's like naively hopeful about everything, but something feels different about this time. And I hope like everyone uses this anger and pain and mobilizes in ways that, we weren't doing before. I think there's a lot of power in unity and collectiveness. So I'm hoping that, I'm hoping that this is the shift that we've been begging for years.
400 something years, but yeah,
something years,
a change gonna come.
I'm just glad that this week is over. It's just been like an emotional roller coaster for me. Just being on social media, seeing posts about the protest and George Floyd and his daughter, and we're still trying to get justice for Breonna Taylor. So I'm just glad that this week is over.
Mm-hmm. This has felt like the longest week. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This week has moved by so slow where like the rest of the week since COVID has started have just ran by. I've been in upstate New York since March, and that feels like it was a hop, skip, and a jump ago. And this week was Solo.
Mm-hmm.
Very.
Yeah, it's a weird time, but hopefully we're all gonna come out of it in a better way. That's all I can hope for, to be honest. But yeah, guys, you'll be excited for this episode.
Before we jump into the episode, let's start with Kia. What's going on this week in Black history?
Okay, guys, so I was deciding what I should do for this week in Black history, looking up the Black facts, and I wanted to again address another riot because I feel like there are so many riots in our history that we do not know about or we were never taught. And I think it's important, especially this riot that happened June 20th to June 22nd. It's the 1943 Detroit race riot. This took place when white people started a rumor that a Black man had killed a white woman and her infant. It was suppressed after 6,000 federal troops were ordered into the city to restore the peace. A total of 34 people were killed. 25 of those people were Black, and most of them were killed by police force. 433 people were wounded. 75% of those 433 were Black, and property valued at $2 million. So in today's value is basically $30 million. That's the amount of property that was destroyed, and that took place in the poorest neighborhood of Detroit. So at that time, a lot of white people kind of mistakenly attribute the cause of the riot to Black people and young people. But the NAACP later identified deeper causes years after this, and they said that the cause for the riot was actually a shortage of affordable housing, discrimination in employment, lack of minority representation in the police, and white police brutality.
So everything now.
Yeah, everything now. This is why I wanted to bring this one up, because it said a late 20th century analysis of the rioters showed that the white rioters were often young and unemployed, and they traveled actually super long distances across the city to join the first stage of the riot that happened to attack the Black people in the poor neighborhood. And the Black people that were involved in these riots, they were actually older and established residents who were there for decades. So these white people basically were coming in trying to take their jobs, and they were mad that they were unemployed, because this is when Detroit started becoming a big place for work. So they traveled distances and kind of just made a rumor and rioted and destroyed a lot of property value. It says many of the Black men were working men. They were married, and they were simply just trying to defend their homes and their neighborhood against the police and the white rioters. And then they also made the point that a lot of the white people destroyed white-owned property and businesses. So I just thought that was important, because that's just another example of history repeating itself almost, and we're not taught about it, so it's going to repeat itself if we're not going to learn. And again, I just want to make a point that white people have been rioting in this country for years and years and decades, and they've been destroying stuff, and we don't. That's just not fair to put that on us right now, especially when right now a lot of white people are the ones starting the riots, and the police are still beating people up at protests that are against police brutality. So yeah.
100%.
Wow. Thank you for that, Kia. Now to Amari with Black Professionals We Love.
So this month is Pride, and I don't think you can properly talk about Pride without talking about Marsha P Johnson, who was an activist, self-identified drag queen, performer, and survivor. She was a prominent figure in the Stonewall Uprising of 1969. She sparked a new phase in the LGBTQ plus movement. And also, along with Sylvia Rivera, she established the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, also known as STAR, in 1970. And that was a group that was dedicated to supporting transgender youth experiencing homelessness in New York City. At one point, Marsha went by Black Marsha, but she eventually settled on Marsha P Johnson, and the P stood for Pay It No Mind, which is in reference to people questioning her gender. Unfortunately, on July 6th, thank you, she was tragically murdered at the age of 46, and her case was closed by the NYPD as an alleged suicide, but transgender activist Maria Lopez fought it to be reopened in 2012. And I think it's, unfortunately, it needs to be said right now. And you would hope that we'd be past this point. But when people talk about Black Lives Matter, they're talking about all Black Lives Matter. So if you're preaching that Black Lives Matter and that does not include transgender people and it does not include queer people, then you do not fully understand what this movement is about. So I don't understand people why would the liberation of Black people come at the exclusion of specific Black people? That does not make any sense to me. My liberation does not seem like it would be sweeter. So just like pay that in mind. There's a lot of, like cisgender, heterosexual, like toxicity in the culture, and we need to address it. And I think now is the time to really fully, bring us together. So I just wanted to point that out because it has been really disappointing for people to be like, oh, I'm about Black Lives Matter, but I'm not, I don't believe in homosexuality. Yeah. And that's just like disgusting. And clearly you don't understand what the movement is actually about. And also like the civil rights movement, all these movements were like pioneered by, Black, gay women and, transgender women. So, yeah, it's just really disappointing to see that.
Do we know how she died?
I mean, they said it was at the time they said it was suicide, but it was clearly a murder. And I don't know if they, after the case was reopened, they fully established what had happened to her. But unfortunately, I think a lot of her death, the true facts of her death remain a mystery. Or not even a mystery. People know.
I'm reading now. She's also an AIDS activist.
Mm-hmm.
And she was known as the mayor of Christopher Street.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, I've seen like her picture a lot. I didn't know that she was murdered, which is insane. But yeah, I think, and also with this topic of, today's topic, I think it applies to, obviously we're doing this because Black people, but I think it applies to the LGBT community too, like how to be an ally for them. I think all the points are like valid on, you could take this and also be an ally to, because like we can't ask people to like white people to do certain things to help us, and when we have privilege as like straight people to we can't complain about white people doing stuff when we do the same stuff to them. Like that doesn't make us any better. And I'm especially just tired of Black straight men like just being so sexist and like homophobic, and it's just like, what's your purpose? Like you guys aren't even the ones on the front lines if we want to keep it real. Like we see like the people who are doing the protests are a lot of Black women leading these protests and stuff, and like you still have the audacity to sit at home and complain and like be sexist and homophobic, and that just doesn't sit right with me, and I'm like still gonna call that out forever.
Yeah, I think a large point to hit on is that you can't necessarily compare struggles, but I do think that you can look at the same struggle, and maybe this is conversations that should be had with specifically older Black men I've been having these conversations with. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the same struggle Black people are going through right now, with police brutality and just the laundry list of things that Black people are struggling with in this country, you can use that same exact argument to apply with how this country is set up as a patriarchal, society. It's the same struggles that women have, and the same exact struggles and struggles that women have, and the privileges that men have, because this is a patriarchal society. We need to do that and apply that to our heterosexual society, and how, because we are straight people, we have more privileges than gay people. And that does not erase your struggle as a Black man or a Black woman, but you do have specific privileges because you're straight or because you're a man. Mm-hmm. So I think those are just important conversations to be had with every single solitary group of people. And same thing with ableism. Mm-hmm. I have absolutely no physical ailment whatsoever. I benefit from ableism in this country. And these are all things to be aware of as you move through society. We all have privilege that needs to be addressed and checked.
100.
Moving on.
So I'm really happy that we're having this discussion. And today's topic is how you can be a better ally. So Janae, do you want to just give us an update of what's going on with George Floyd and the cops, the 4 cops who arrested him, and what's going on with his case, and if those officers were convicted?
Yeah. Hopefully everyone knows what's been going on, and none of you who are listening are living under a rock, but just in case, I'll give a brief summary of what happened. On May 25th, George Floyd, a 46-year-old Black man, was suspected of using a fake $20 bill. He was apprehended by 4 officers where he supposedly, according to some reports, resisted arrest, and he fell to the ground. He was then pinned by Derek Chauvin?
No, it's Derek Chauvin.
Chauvin, sorry. Mm-hmm. Derek Chauvin, and he had his knee on Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, killing Floyd. His last words were, "Mama, and I can't breathe." His death was caught on camera by several onlookers, which launched all of the Black Lives Matter protests that you've seen today. And all 50 states in America have actually protested since his death. Derek Chauvin was charged with second-degree murder, and this was added to previous charges of third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. The 3 other officers, Thomas Lane, J. Alexander Kyung, who helped restrain Floyd, and Tao Thao, apologies if the names are pronounced wrong, who stood nearby and, watched, were charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder and aiding and abetting second-degree manslaughter. So quick note for anyone saying that protesting / rioting and looting does not work. I am a strong believer that if none of this stuff happened, we would not have gotten this far.
Mm-hmm.
And some other updates is that the state of Minnesota filed a civil rights lawsuit against the Minneapolis Police Department from after these protests. And then also the University of Minnesota is going to disassociate itself from the Minneapolis police following the death of George Floyd. So things are happening. And yeah, like Janae said, like people want to talk all this stuff about protesting doesn't do stuff, riots don't do stuff. Like, what is this serving? And it's like, we've actually seen a lot in the last few weeks. Like if people would just Google or like read the news, because I know people who are at home like criticizing just seem to never pick up a book or Google, but things are changing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you're wondering how you can be a better ally, we're going to just give some pointers on, what we believe that people who want to be an ally to the Black community, and this is not just to white people, it's also for other minority groups who are being silent. So Janae, do you want to start with one of the ways that someone can be an ally to the Black Lives Matter movement?
Yeah. And this was something that I literally just said. It goes with recognizing your privilege. We all have privilege in this society, but specifically when it comes to being a white person, you have the most privilege on this earth. And I think it's knowing that just because you are a poor white person doesn't mean that you do not have more opportunity than other groups of people. You do have more opportunity. And I think that, and a lot of things that I've been hearing recently have been that if you want to be an ally, this is not going to be just a one-time donating thing. Mm-hmm. There will be things that you have to sacrifice. And one of those things that you have to sacrifice is recognizing and owning your privilege and fighting for those who don't have as much privilege as you do. It's real easy to sit back when things are happy and when, things about George Floyd kind of fall back as they have every single solitary time this happens. But what will you do to not necessarily fight against your privilege, but to own your privilege and help out other people when things quiet down?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think a lot of times white people just, when they hear privilege, they immediately think money-wise, which never made sense to me. But, like, because a lot of people Colin Kaepernick, they're like, he has privilege, he's in the NFL. And I'm like, are you stupid? Like, no matter how much money, he's still going to be black. Like, that's so dumb to me. So I think it's like, and I think a lot of people, like, get so quick to be offensive on privilege, but it's just like, a lot of times it really just starts by, like, recognizing that you have it, which really shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah.
Amari?
Yeah. So a next point too is just like educate yourself. One, educate yourself, but also stop expecting and asking Black people to educate you. I don't think people understand how much like that puts on Black people, and it's not our jobs to, you know, tell you where to look for specific resources. Like as Janae said earlier, you know, we have such access to books, documentaries, just at our fingers. Go to Google. So also, like, you know, Van Jones made a good point that college costs a lot because education is not free. So, like, why would you expect Black people to educate you for free? You know, there are millions and thousands of resources between books and documentaries. Like we said, you know, you can just go to Netflix and don't watch The Help, people. PSA, don't freaking watch The Help. That is not what we're talking about when we're talking about resources. You know, we're talking about a lot of other things. That's last on the list. Actually, just throw away your copies. So yeah, definitely, you know, don't stop expecting Black people to educate you on certain things when you could just look it up and, you know, become your own mini researcher.
Become your own help.
Become your own help.
Okay, so I'll go next. It's important that we talk about racism in America. It's important that we address that it is an issue. Talk about it with your friends, your families, white friends, Black friends, brown friends, Asian friends. Talk about it. So if we're constantly talking about it, when things like this comes up, when we talk about Black Lives Matters, we're hearing people saying ignorant shit like all lives matters. All lives cannot matter if Black lives don't matter. So if we're talking about racism in this country, we're acknowledging that it is a thing. And I think that's important.
Yeah. And also, like, just to add on that too, I think, you know, a lot of people say like dinner table, like talk should not include like race, you know, politics, money, like those are topics you should stay away from. But like, I don't know about you guys, but my best conversations I've had have always been around the dinner table. And I think that's a perfect place to open up topics like this. And if you create an environment where you're not comfortable talking about these things, then you don't go out and have the opportunity to learn. So like you have to open up those conversations in your home.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I think that's such a cop-out to be like, I don't want to talk about it. Like, right. I don't want to live it. Shut up. Like, oh, if we had choice, don't you think we'd be making different choices? So my point, which I think is one of the first steps, along with recognizing your privilege, is listen, which I think is so simple, but so many people don't know how to just shut up and listen. Like, if a Black person is telling you how they feel about a certain issue, or just in general, shut up. You don't need to, like, defend yourself. You don't need to compare yourself to how your grandparents were in the Holocaust. Like, just shut up for, like, 2 seconds and actually listen to what they have to say. Like, try to understand where they're coming from, because they're not just, like, talking about racism for fun.
And to add to that point a little bit more, which you already mentioned, people adding and talking about the Holocaust, I get it. We all want to be able to share and to, I don't know,
relate, I guess.
Relate, yeah. It's just a natural human thing. But in these types of conversations, comparing struggles, don't do it. Just don't do it. I get it. Like, I just went on 3 whole rants about privilege is a thing. We all have it in some areas. We all don't have it in certain areas. But if I'm talking about the way Black people are brutalized and murdered in this country, do not talk about how gay people are also brutalized and murdered in this country. They're 2 different conversations. We don't need to have them at the same time.
And if you want to bring up the struggle war, you're going to lose. Yeah. Like, I don't think anything tops slavery. Like, just, you're going to lose. Just stop. Like,
I mean, I think like kind of what Janae was saying, like, if we're going to like, you know, compare struggles or whatever, but like, I think like in that moment, like, we're not talking about like the gay white man struggle compared to like the Black person struggle. We can talk about the struggle of Black gay people, the struggle of Black transgender women as it relates to Black lives. And I think like that's kind of like the point. Like we all have experiences and struggles, but like I think we have to like focus. Like right now, it's about the way, like you said, Black people are being brutalized in this country, and so I mean, granted, like you said, like Black people are a part of a whole spectrum like of different identities and stuff, but it's about Black people in this moment.
Yeah.
The next point that I had was, very similar. I think you'll find a lot of overlapping in some of the stuff that we're saying, but I don't think that changes how just important these conversations are to have. My point was standing up for people of color in the conversations that you're having with friends and family. I think right now, as a white person, the most important thing that you can be doing is going through your social media and looking at the people who you follow. If you're scrolling through and you're seeing tons of All Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, rioting and looting is ridiculous, and it's hurting our economy and it's killing our community. I think you need to take a step back and think about the people you were raised by and thinking about the people that you surround yourself by now.
And also, like, on that point too, like, we know like white people have the way they talk once white people, it's different how they talk to us. And like I know that because white people tell us that. Like my friend told me about how like her ex-boyfriend would say like the N-word, and obviously he wasn't gonna say it around me, but like he would do stuff like when he would literally be like, oh, there's no Black people around, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like we know you guys talk differently like when we're not there, and like obviously we can't stand up for ourselves if we're not in the conversation. Like you have to, that is your job to do that. You can't just like be complicit and be like, haha, he said the N-word. Like it's not funny. Like,
and whether we are in the room or whether we are not in the room, Black people cannot speak up for themselves in this country any more than they already have. For white people, Black voices are not a credible source. So even if I was in the room and your boyfriend said the N-word, me saying that that's not right, he's going to look at me and laugh. It is white people's job to speak up and stand up for voices of color. I ain't a credible source no more for white people. It's your turn to do the work. We're tired. White people don't listen to us. It's your turn to help out and talk to your racist uncle who still has a Confederate flag hanging in his damn garage. Talk to your dad who jokes about Black people not having jobs. Talk to your brother who makes a statement about big lips. Correct all of those things. Stand up. Say something. Your silence is complicit, which is the next point we will be getting to. I'm done.
Before we get to the complicit, your silence, we're going to talk about analyzing your past and current actions and how that has contributed to white supremacy. I don't know about you guys, but I have been getting, some texts and people reaching out about past transgressions that have happened. And I think you have a lot of people who are now going through the list of things that they may have done in the past and trying to analyze that and rethink about that and the ways that they have hurt people and have contributed to the greater topic of white supremacy and upheld those. So like understand why those statements that you've made are problematic and address them and see how you can, prevent that from happening in the future. And that comes from whether you say it, that comes from whether someone around you says that. So yeah, just like power, like words have power, and that clearly we have seen that throughout, what's happening right now, but just also throughout history. So like, don't act like what you say doesn't matter, because it really matters.
If you have a moment where you realize, oh, I said something kind of not great. I said something ignorant. I said something racist to someone that I went to high school with, someone I went to college with, my next door neighbor, whoever. I would say that now is not necessarily the time to reach out with any type of apology and expect a response. or expect to be validated by your feelings. I think if you want to issue an apology, you need to sit back first and wonder about what kind of response you are looking for. I think a lot of times it's just human nature to apologize and expect some type of dialogue and some type of dialogue absolving you of your sins. But right now, and frankly, ever, Black people don't have to give that to you. So if you're apologizing, a simple, I'm so sorry for any trouble that I have caused you. I don't expect you to respond. Stay blessed. That's simple and good enough.
I also think, I don't know if this is one of our points, but I was talking to my friend about this because I see a lot of people posting Black Lives Matters and stuff, and it's a lot of people who were debating me and my other Black friends about All Lives Matter, and it's like, I'm not going to forget that. I haven't forgotten it. It would actually be quite hard for me to forget who publicly debated me on Black Lives Matter 5 years ago, and now all of a sudden you guys are turned, to the good side. And it's like, that doesn't make you any better, to be honest. It actually makes you almost worse. And either kind of like the whole Leah Michelle thing, how she admitted that she didn't even remember treating Black people so bad, just shows a lot about you. Like, you've just been out here terrorizing Black people subconsciously, consciously, I don't know. They're both bad. But you don't even have the audacity to apologize when you want to publicly say Black Lives Matter so you can look good. But like, the Black people remember how you treat them. And a lot of people are going to see that losing their jobs like that, like Leah Michelle, like the Dance Moms girl who posted Black Lives Matter, and the girls on Dance Moms were like, you were actually incredibly racist to my children, and they ended her show. And like, I think that's fair, because you can't publicly be like, oh, I'm an ally, and then you treat Black people terribly. Like, it's just, it doesn't work like that. And we will remember like how you treated us, and you should apologize. Like, you don't get points for just saying hashtag Black Lives Matter. Like, you need to apologize to the people you hurt. And that if you told girls, oh, you're pretty for a Black girl, you ain't that ugly for Black people, like, if you said stuff like that, you need to apologize. That's just my opinion.
My next point is short and sweet. You are not a savior. Don't act like one. Period. Period.
Amen, Bishop. Amen.
If you want to be an ally to make yourself feel good, to make it seem like you're saving someone or saving Black people, you can hang with us.
Yeah, you could keep it.
You can keep it.
I wish I wish listeners could see Rachel's face right now. If they saw her face, they would know the level in which she was not playing around.
Check the YouTube out.
Period.
Period. Poo. My next point is, I guess it goes off the first point when I said listen, but I think people need to have empathy, and I think in general the human race I feel like they always had a difficult problem with having empathy. I feel like it's a rare trait for people to have. And I think when Black people are addressing situations, you have to understand that their lives are just simply different. Like, we hear about racism, guys, every single day. And I know you're like, yeah, that's dramatic. No, it's not, because it is every day. Whether we read the news, whether we scroll on Tinder and y'all say some dumb shit about us, about how you never tried a Black girl before, or, we have to see the news about George Floyd. We have to, like, go to work and get microaggressions. Like, it is every day. We walk down the street and we see how people look at us. It is every day. And you have to understand, like, people have a lot of pain from that. And it's not just their lives. It's generations, especially Black Americans. You have generations, like, a lot of generations of people just being like hurt and in pain and like treated unfairly, and that takes a lot on anyone. If you see people who look like you that have been terrorized in this world for 500 plus years, like, you have to understand, like, they have pain, and you need to be empathetic to that.
The next point that I have is be an ally in your workplace. This is such an important thing, and I think it might be a hard thing to focus on for a lot of people, because a lot of us are focused on our own betterment. We're all focused on climbing our own ladder, but I think it's important as a white person to look back and think about people who have been passed up for certain opportunities. Think about people on your team that just naturally will have a harder time assimilating to your team. This was a big thing that I found out in my own career when I first started. Not only was it difficult for me to, navigate this workplace as a Black woman where I don't even necessarily identify with a lot of the people that I work with. Just for example, there were specific cultural elements when they're talking about grunge rock music in the 90s in the newsroom and joking about it. And I can't even relate about that. I mean, if y'all want to talk about Jill Scott, we could go back and forth. And, in workplaces, having those conversations that make you a more relatable and likable person push you farther, point blank, period. So if I'm starting off at a different viewpoint than you are, I can't get farther. If I'm starting off from a different viewpoint than every white person in my newsroom, then how am I going to move forward when people think I just don't have a personality because I can't talk about the same things as them? So I think that being an ally in your workplace looks like having conversations with people who don't look like you, asking them what their goals are, what they want to do, asking them how I can help, volunteering to help them get from point A to point B, maybe even having conversations with your boss. I think it's just putting yourself out there in a different and harder way. But if you want to be an ally, this is one of the things that you should do.
Yeah, I also think with that, it's like, and Janae, I feel like we talked about this at The Evil Employer, but how there were conversations when white girls got hired to watch out for the one of many perpetrators at that job, and me and you like had no idea. But that wasn't even like the first time. Like, it was a lot of times we would find out that people were having like conversations without us, and it's like a lot of, I don't know if they did that on purpose, probably, but like people have to realize like a lot of times people don't include POCs in their workplace like conversations, and that's like super problematic. Like, again, like you said, like, how are we going to move up if we're not even part of the conversation? And it's also like, if you are in a managerial role, whether you like are in charge of hiring interns or in charge of hiring like managers, like it is your job also to make sure you're diversifying that like environment. Like, because I would make an effort to like every single intern I have like is either gay or a woman, like, or obviously Black. But it's just like I had to actually fight really hard for interns. Like the company would a lot of times they would actually stop me from hiring certain interns because so-and-so's cousin daughter wanted to be the intern, and I actually had no say. Like, they just told me to stop the whole interview process. This is who we're going to take. Like, and it sucked because it opened my eyes like, wow, it's just an internship. Like, they don't even you guys aren't even giving them the opportunity to interview. Like, so I would make an effort like to really bring those people in, and like they would only go to NYU, and like we know NYU's not diverse. Like, come on now. Like, I would just make an effort.
My mom can tell you some stories about NYU.
Screw NYU. Like, I don't know why that was the only place we were like allowed to get interns. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm going to speak up for these people because I know what it's like to have an internship, and I don't think it's fair to not even give people the opportunity because they don't go to a rich school. Like, that's just simply, that's awful.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've only worked really at two specific companies as a full-time, employee, but the one that I felt most protected in was when we had a group of women on the editorial staff, and we were such a varied group of women. I was Black. We had an Indian coworker, a Mexican coworker, a Jewish, Chinese coworker, and then there was like one white woman. But that was probably the most supported I had ever felt in a work environment. And I don't think it's coincidental that it was a mixed group of people. We were, telling each other, like, this is how much I make. This is how much you should ask for in a raise. Like, actively working to get more Black and brown voices. So, like, if your office, the more diverse your office is, the more diversity of thought you will get, and more inclusive the environment will feel. So I think that's like important.
And I'll also add.
Make one.
Oh yeah, you go, Rachel.
Sorry, I just want to make one point that stop making people of color feel like the help when we are actually a part of the team.
Mm-hmm.
because I work in an office setting where the higher up is majority white older men, and underneath is Black women. And oftentimes I don't feel like it's an integrated work environment. It's like I said, I feel like we're just the help when we're actually like a part of the team. We're part of this mission. So that's all I want to say.
That's a good point, though, Rich.
It is. And I also wanted to add that diversity is not a linear thing. It's not something that should just happen during Black History Month or, specifically in editorial. It's not, you shouldn't just hire Black writers when a famous Black person dies and you want to do some type of written report commemorating their life. Diversity and celebrating people of color, learning about different cultures, that should be something that's done 360 days a year. Like I said, like it should not be just done on Black History Month. Like you need to constantly focus on hiring Black voices. It'll really help your company.
We promise you it will.
Studies
show, but studies actually do show us. So my next point on how you can be an ally is just like, stop putting your white guilt on Black people and yourself and make yourself feel better. I've grown up apologizing to people who have acted against me because they've made me feel bad about them feeling bad. So not only do I feel, awful about a situation, but then I'm made to feel bad about, them feeling bad, which makes no sense. How do we have so many people who are brought up to apologize for things that have been done to them? Just like, if you're going to reach out to people, be very, very thoughtful and like Janae said, intentional about why you're reaching out to people about certain things. If it's to put your guilt on them, that is not helpful. And that does not show that you have grown as a person, because you're not completely understanding the impact of what you've done. I mean, if you want to use your white guilt to, get Black people a job or to help them get a raise, that's at least somewhat beneficial to them. But to do that just to make yourself feel better is not the way to go.
My next point is this takes time. No one is expecting you to be an expert on Black issues overnight, but understand that the path to being a great ally can always be improved and doesn't just stop one day or start because there are protests. And this goes back to us saying that you have to educate yourself. Black history in the school system should not be taught in one day. It should take a semester worth of learning, because that's how much history there is, and even more. Also, what's going to happen next month? Are we going to act like this never happened? Are we going to keep supporting Black businesses, keep donating and volunteering? Or are we just going to sit back and continue creating TikTok videos and doing challenges and act like Black lives don't matter because we're Black every single day? This should be a fight that we're doing every day. Every day.
I love that. TikTok videos.
Also, like, Rachel has been showing us these TikTok videos of white women shaving their heads in honor of Black history, in honor of the Black Lives Matter movement, and like people like doing half blackface.
Oh God, yeah, I saw that too. Oh Jesus. Okay. Yeah, don't do
Rachel,
that.
what did you say?
I said let's not give them any more attention.
You're right.
Guys, don't shave your head for Black people. We don't care.
We really don't.
Just cash up us some money instead.
And don't think that your hair is going to Black people, because that is not our texture.
We
No, it's not.
we don't want it. I know you guys think it mostly comes from India, so you're pretty irrelevant. Watch good hair. I don't know. It's basic. My next point is recognize the power of your voice and actions. Janae touched on this a couple of times in this episode, but it's stuff like recognizing your privilege. So you have to recognize that in history with the civil rights movement and the Stonewall riots, they didn't just like make those changes because it was simply the minority. They made those changes because they had white allies who had power. Like, we wouldn't have had a lot of these laws passed. There were no Black people in the government. Like, how do you think we got the laws passed? We needed people to, like, speak up for us. We needed people to advocate for us. Like, we can't just do it on our own. You have to, like Janae made a good point. My voice is, like, invalid now. Like, I've said everything I had to do. No Black person is doing a hot take on racism in 2020. Like, it's just, we need other people to speak up and do the work. So if that means, like, you're a white doctor, you need to speak up. If that means you're in the government, you need to speak up. You need to push these things forward. If you're a teacher and you're a history teacher, speak up and talk about Black history. Another thing is people have to recognize, like, even in the protests, and I was listening to the Guys Who Fuck podcast, and they were talking about how they were protesting, and they were talking about how the person leading the protest was like, white people get in the front, like when they would approach the police, because if white people are in the front, they're less likely to act a fool and just like tear gas everyone and all that stuff. And it's like things like that where like that's all you have to do is show up, like go in front with everyone. And I know it's scary, and I'm not saying that everyone has to do it. I know it could be frightening for people, but if you are going to show up to a protest, best believe you need to get your ass in the front, and you need to walk in the front so the police can like not attack us. Like, it's just simple as that. Like, they're just not going to attack you like they're going to attack us. So it's just recognizing your voice and your actions have a little more weight than us, unfortunately, but that's just the reality.
That's so scary and sad that we're at the point, or you know what, we've always been at this point where it's like white people have to push themselves to the front because white officers are less likely to harm a white person than a Black person. Like, that just speaks all the volumes.
Yeah, but I'm glad people are doing it in these protests, because it's true. Like, you have to, if you're going to show up in ours, and they made a really good point, like, if you're going to show up in their space, you need to do what you're asked. Like, you need to go to the front. If they ask you to go to the front, go to the front. Like, you are a guest in that space.
Yeah.
Oh, Kia, but speak on that. You are a guest in that space.
I like that.
It's not for your influencer posting. We've seen you influencers posting just to post. We got it on camera. It's not cute. Get your ass in the front.
Yeah. My next 2 points, I'm going to put them into one because I think that they relate to each other very well. Check on your Black friends and understand that your silence is complicit, which I hit on earlier in the episode, but we gonna dive a little deeper now. First off, I want to shout out to some of my white friends right now who have been checking in on me. And they haven't been checking in on me in like I'm so sorry for what's going on. It's just having honest conversations, on being willing to have honest and open conversations about what's going on right now. And they're not asking me questions, needing me to educate them. It's just being open to talking about what's going on in the world. And I really appreciate that right now more than any other time. I've been able to have those conversations with my white friends, and it hasn't been something that has felt forced. Mm-hmm. On that same note, understanding that silence is complicit by you not saying anything, by you not donating, by you not, taking a moment to do any type of research or try to learn, you're helping. You're standing against this cause. And I understand that, as a white person who has grown up privileged compared to a lot of other people, it might be difficult to say anything right now because you're afraid of offending someone, or you're afraid of saying the wrong thing, even if your heart is in the right place. But stop being afraid. Mm-hmm. Just stop. We ain't got time to be afraid anymore. It's time for you to do some work. And it's time for you to do a little bit more than just post on social media. It's time for you to think about your role in this world as a person with a lot of privilege. And it's time for you to think about whether you want to just sit back and be okay with that, or if you want to do something about it. Because if you want to sit back, then I don't expect you to see shit. Like, I don't expect you to post shit about anything going on politically in this landscape. Like, you better just stay quiet.
And the world never became a better place from people just sitting on their ass and not doing anything. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not that hard to, like, comprehend. Like, the world did not get better with you simply just living your life in your own lens and not speaking up. Like, it gets better because we have conversations and we do actions. Like, it's I'd rather you just tell me to my face I hate Black people than be quiet.
But definitely I think the silence has helped me. I think like how like when the election with Trump happened and people were talking about like how they were going to vote for him, it was so blatant who I needed to remove from my life. Yeah. And I think now with, you know, certain people posting on social, but like also not acting, or people just remaining silent, has really shown me who I need to remove from my space. And luckily I felt very vindicated in the relationships I have with certain white people and certain non-Black people, because, you know, what I felt about them before has been confirmed in the ways in which they've reacted to what has been happening. And it's not just a one, how are you doing, Amari? Like, I'm thinking about you. It's like a continuous conversation of like check-ins, or like them recognizing that I need space and kind of separating for a bit. But, you know, I have felt good about the allies that are continuing to show me that they are allies.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll definitely say that there are several ways to get involved. I'll touch on that more later. But this whole I'm scared to speak up, that's bullshit.
And people are scared to be Black. Shut up. Like,
exactly. Like, you know,
such a weak ass like statement.
I have to navigate the world knowing that just as a Black woman, when I have a kid one day, there's a chance that I could die on the delivery table because the doctor will have some type of bias set up and won't believe that I'm in pain when I'm in pain. And you know what? Screw that. Not even when I'm in pregnancy. Not even when I give birth. It's when I go to the doctor in general. Doctors have biases against Black people and their pain.
Yeah.
You can go to the doctor and get whatever the fuck you need and even abuse that. I ain't even got a chance to abuse it. So
just let us abuse too. Okay.
Janae's kind of already touched on this based off of, you know, like social media and, you know, stopping instead of just keep on scrolling, like stop and read. And so people really do need to, my next point is that people really do need to analyze your media consumption and your content consumption. Like, if you only follow white influencers and YouTubers and only read white writers and only watch, you know, content that is produced by majority white, you know, writers, directors, all that stuff, you need to analyze that and, you know, understand and realize that that's pretty closed-minded. No, it's not pretty closed-minded. It's closed-minded. It's ignorant. And you're only looking to see the lens, the world through one specific lens. So diversify the content in which you're consuming, like seek out Black writers and like watch Black shows by Black creators. And, you know, that's a part of your education.
Yeah, and it's people probably a lot of subconsciously. I know people aren't like only white people, but it's like that's subconscious. Like, you know, it's like, of course I'm going to listen to the podcast that looks like me and talks like me and all this stuff. And it's just like making a conscious effort to be like, hey, I should probably have some other perspectives. And someone made a good point about how like, and I had to check myself on this too, like how they were looking at like, and also I know it is a little difficult because these social media platforms simply promote white people more. They just do. It's a fact. And they have to like kind of go through like the YouTuber, like with fitness, like a lot of the people that are big on YouTube are like white people. And it's like, there are Black fitness people too. Like it's kind of just like taking the extra step to just do a little more digging. Like to just like diversify, like Amari said, like your media consumption, like you're also going to be a better, more well-rounded person in general, instead of just being like I only talk to white people kind of thing.
I think, at least for me, I had a really eye-opening experience when I'm a reader, and I think a lot of people know I'm a reader, but I read this collection of short stories by this Indian writer called When You See Me, Don't Say Hi. And it's one of my favorite collections ever written. And I had realized for the first time, I was like, wow, that's the book I've ever read by an Indian American. And it really just made me realize that I had to, I had not given so many chances to things because I just wasn't exposed to them and I hadn't been searching for that. And I can't even remember how I came across that book, but it really just changed my life. And also just, so like, if you want to read it, you guys should actually really read it. But just like simple things like that, I think everyone, should take the time to just like reflect and assess like what you are consuming on a daily basis and how that does really impact the way you see things.
And I just want to give like a quick reminder that people of color, for the most part, don't necessarily need to do this with white people, because everything that we are exposed to from birth is white.
Mm-hmm.
The magazines that we look at, the TV shows that we watch, the commercials we see, the books we read, our teachers,
the music we hear,
the music we hear, we are exposed to white things in this country before we are exposed to things from other cultures. And that's just the terrible way that this country is set up. So Black people don't have to do the work to learn more about white culture. That's a whole different conversation, because
the culture is white. It's been set up that way.
Culture is white, and it's been stolen by marginalized communities. But still, Black people don't need to do the same work that white people need to do.
Facts.
My final point is stop telling Black people to forget about slavery. We're told never to forget about 9/11, and we don't tell Jewish people to forget about the Holocaust. So don't tell people, us Black people, to forget about slavery. This again, like if you're educated on Black history, what actually happened in slavery, you would not tell a Black person, like, why are you still talking about slavery? Why are we still bringing this up? Not even about slavery, also about the civil rights movement, like things that have happened in America to Black people. We're still talking about it because it's still going on today. It's 2020 and we're still talking about race in America.
There are sharecroppers today. Like, there are people who are sharecropping today. Like, there is modern day slavery. Like, it's just also so ignorant to just tell someone, forget about your history, even though we like raped and killed and rioted and all your people, but like, and hung them and lynched them. And even though they're still trying to pass anti-lynching laws today. So don't tell people, oh, it's just like.
They had Kamala Harris, the only Black senator up there trying to explain why. Like that, this, like I can't even.
It's just, we have to tell you guys to not lynch us.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it said that you never tell Jewish people to forget about the Holocaust. Y'all are first to bring that up.
Yeah.
And Black people are in the Holocaust, guys. Read a book. We were there with you. Like,
I actually just want to go on a really, really quick rant about the Confederate flag. Real quick. Real quick. The Confederate flag represents a split nation. And when I see someone with a Confederate flag, you're telling me that you hate me and that you are for slavery and for the splitting of this nation. Having a Confederate flag is not Southern memorabilia. If someone had great-great-grandparents or great-grandparents who were Nazis and they still had Nazi memorabilia, seems like a lot of people would say that's wrong, right?
You don't see that in Germany. You just don't.
You don't. I'm sure if you do, they keep that shit hella quiet.
And they tell us forget about slavery, but y'all still won't take down the Robert E. Lee statue until recently.
Exactly. And I'm in upstate New York seeing people with Confederate flags, and I'm like, and you guys want to say that it's just memorabilia, it's honoring my grandfather.
As if Black people weren't from the South and weren't in that army too.
And your grandfather was on the wrong side.
And it's also un-American too. It's simply un-American.
It's un-American. You want this country to be split. You do not want a United States of America. You don't want that if you are touting the Confederate flag. And white people, you got family members who walk around proud with their damn Confederate flag, especially if they live in the North, especially if you live in New York State. You're dumb.
It's tacky.
That they're dumb. It's tacky. It's more than tacky. It's racist.
Your whole family from Maine talking about we want to do South Memorabilia. Like, get out of here.
Was that an accent, Kia?
No, that was just me like when I do my side eye voice to white people. I'll lump 2 points together because Janae kind of touched on this, but it's like, what side of history do you want to be on? Do you want to look back? Because we're obviously in a historical moment, guys. Like, we're gonna talk about this forever. Mixed with COVID, mixed with this, but it's like, what side of history do you want to be on? Do you want to be on the side that you were just complicit? And at the end of the day, you're going to have to go to bed. And when your kids ask you, hey, mommy, you were alive during this time. What did you do? You're going to have to look them in the eye and be like, I didn't do shit. I just sat there and did nothing. Your kids are going to side at you, and I hope you're happy. But this one, I'm forgetting the author. She's married to one of the female soccer players. I think it's Megan Rapone, his wife. I'm going to look it up real quick. But she's an author, and she had young kids, and her kids were like, they were reading a history book, and her kids were like, hey, mommy, did you, if we lived back then, like, would we have been on, like, the right side, or would we have to been, like, marching with Black people, or would we not have been marching with them? And she was like, oh, of course we would be marching with them. Like, why wouldn't we? And then the kid goes, well, we're not marching with them now. Like, and it was like, and they're kids, like, they don't know that they're being, like, calling them out and stuff. But the kid was like, well, we're not marching with them now. Why would we be marching them later? And then she had to realize, like, oh, I'm being, like, complicit. I'm, like, not doing anything. My kids see me as being a terrible ally, as being super complicit. And she started making a huge effort to, like, change her life and, like, expose her kids and go to these rallies. And she's also a gay woman too. She's a really interesting story, and her following is, like, very Christian based. I'm forgetting her name. I'm sorry, guys. I'm forgetting it's not Megan Rapone. God damn it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's not her.
It's someone else. But yeah. And then my other point was, I think it was, sorry, I'm reading it now. Oh, support Black-owned businesses. I mean, this just is super quick. Just do it. We know you don't seek out Black businesses, but, like, make a small effort to, whether it's a local restaurant or, like, for me, I was, like, looking at and also just Google. Like, there's so many things about Black-owned restaurants, and I always get tea, and I was like, I'm going to make an effort to get Black-owned tea now. Like, I get tea so much. Let me just support the community. And now I'm really going to make an effort to buy, like, beauty products and tea in restaurants that are more Black owned, because it's just simply not in our face, which is unfortunate. Like, if you go on all of the beauty brands, it's like Glossier and in the same 5 brands in every single magazine. And it's like, you never are supporting, we never see the support. So we got to kind of, like, make an effort to support, which sucks, but it's like we just gotta make an effort to, like, really support Black-owned businesses. And if you think entrepreneurship is hard for white people, guys, guess how hard it is for Black people. So
my last point is donate, vote, volunteer. Once again, we're sounding like a broken record here, but donate your funds to Black-owned businesses, or all of these organizations, or the families of people who have been killed by police. No one's telling you to donate $1 million like my boys BTS just did. No one's
they did?
We can keep on supporting.
Yeah. Was it $1 million or $1 billion? They either donated $1 million.
Oh, if it's $1 billion, you should suck their dick. I'm sorry.
Janae, like, well, I was already prepared.
This is rated PG-13, guys.
Yeah. Donated $1 million. And guess what? My boys donated $1 million like a week ago, and it just cleared. That's why the news is coming out, because they low-key just like...
I'm going to say The Weeknd did too, just gang, and he has multiple times, but I know people don't like him, but I just want to say... and he also donates to I think it's the education department or something in Ethiopia about Black Lives Matter and Canada too. So it's also important to like make sure your favorite people donate and too. Like, because you don't want to be following people that, and like Trina, who just sounds stupid. Is it worth like supporting someone who's a dummy, or do you want to support someone that like makes an effort?
Because that was a big thing for me this week. I almost had to break up with BTS because I wasn't hearing anything from my boys. And frankly, those of you who listen or those of you who know me know that I'm a bit of a K-pop stan, specifically a BTS stan. And in K-pop, they directly benefit from Black culture. They take the most glamorous and cool parts of hip hop and Blackness and they make money off of it. And BTS does that too. And, you know, from what I've seen as a fan, BTS, unlike many other K-pop groups, does do their job. They do research. They work with Black artists and Black producers. They're not just necessarily in this bubble of take, you know, without giving back. So just on that, donate and make sure the people that you follow are donating to and using their voice. Vote, pay attention to your local elections and local legislation. I think we're always talking about the presidential campaigns and what's going on at the highest level. And I think that we're not necessarily looking at our local level, which is just so important. And that's something I need to do more work on too, frankly. And then volunteer your time, bruh. Help out. Volunteer in communities and areas that are marginalized and more affected by literally everything going on in the world. Give your time to the cause.
And on voting too, it's like when we think about voting, a lot of times, and we saw this in the last election about how people were just like their reasons for voting for Trump, but it's like they simply didn't think about how voting for Trump would impact minorities. Like, you voting for Trump is telling Mexican people you actually don't give a fuck about them, and you're gonna build that wall and you're gonna cage these kids, but why does it matter? It don't affect you, right? And that's such a terrible way to act. Like, when you vote, you have to understand that these people don't just affect you. They affect people who almost have no rights, or treated like lower class citizens. And like, when you're voting for, you know, even like taxes and all this stuff, it's like you have to make a conscious effort to not just think about you and white people. Like, these laws affect us. And if you want babies in cages, then I guess go ahead, vote for Trump.
And, you know, I remember you just made me remember that when Trump was elected into office, there was just so much conversation. So many people were saying that their politics shouldn't affect their friendships and their relationships with people. If you're voting for someone like Donald Trump, then you're telling me as a person of color, I don't matter. You're telling me that you're supporting someone who has made racist and sexist and terrible comments about so many groups of people. You cannot just say that this is my politics and who I am as a person are completely separate. They're integrated.
Like, what do you think informs your politics? It's your beliefs as a person.
It's such a dumb argument. It's just like, you sound dumb.
Like, everything is intertwined, and the fact that people try so hard to separate it, it's just like, you can't. Everything is political. Like,
I don't know if they just think it's like, because for us, we obviously have to see, like I said, the lens of like, if we were an immigrant or, you know, from Mexico or Latin American country, we have to see like, this is our livelihood. Like, if you guys try to defund like the dreamers and stuff, people are going back to their country. Like, that's my life. So for you to be like, oh, it's not personal, it's just politics. My life is personal. Like, right. That's who I am. Like, you're trying to like deport my family. That's personal to me. And I'm just supposed to be like, haha, sorry, daddy. At least I'm friends with Jimmy. Like, that's not how life works.
Not at all. My next point is use any type of platform you have. I think people have this idea that you have to have 1 million followers to create an impact, but I don't care how many followers. You can have 5, you can have 20, you can have, 500. Speak out and, share. If you read an article that is so informative, like, share that. Don't even think twice about like wondering if you should share, asking the person who wrote it to share it. Like, just share it and spread that knowledge. But also, like, make sure you aren't doing it for clout. Just posting a black square on Instagram for Blackout Tuesday is not cute if you're not using that time to also educate yourself, to support Black businesses, to do the work. Like, that is so, it's just trash. It's just like so trash and so superficial. Like, putting a Black square does not prove that you actually care about Black lives. So like, use your platform for good and make sure like you're pushing out good information.
Yeah, we can all post a Black square. We can all be allies. So
Yeah.
Rachel, you had one more point. I think you had stop being so defensive and stop comparing. Or did we do that?
No, we already said stuff like that. So, Kia, you can just go on with your last point.
Okay, so my last point is to address white people with Black partners. How you can be an ally, because I think it's super important. Like white people who have Black partners, and it's like you have to see your partner. You have to be a good partner, and being a good partner means standing up for them. If that means standing up for Black people, like we said, to your friends, to your family, like, because we know your family says racist stuff about us. You have to remember, like, if you want to be in your partner's life, you need to be an ally. You need to step up, and with all the points that we just said. And also because I'm sorry, a lot of times we see these white girls dating these Black guys who are clearly racist. Like, a lot of these white girls will, like, date a Black guy and then simply terrorize Black women in their everyday life or on the internet. And it's just like, do you not see that that's an issue? Like, and a lot of these men, like, will just let them do it, which don't make any sense to me either. It's like, are you just okay with that? Like, that's terrible. I think if you're gonna make the effort on both sides to date outside your race, you need to, like, understand some certain things. Like, it's just simply not going to be as simple as it is dating inside your race. Oh shit, I almost forgot my point. Fuck, it was a good point too. Wait, about because if you're gonna have like mixed kids and stuff, a lot of mixed people have been coming out saying like their white mamas are like saying terrible stuff and like saying really like passive aggressive things to them. And I'm just like, you made an effort to have a Black child. Like, that child is a person. Like, they're people. They're not just like to post on Instagram, you have mixed babies and your babies have tan skin. It's like they're still people. Like, so if you're actually gonna reproduce and have a life with a Black partner, please do your job. Like, please make an effort to make that Black child safe and like speak up for Black people. You just can't take us and like act like we're like property and just be complicit too. Like, it's just gross that I have to even address that. And let's stop like engaging with people who don't value us. Like, let's stop engaging with people who fetishize us. Why are we doing that? I'm confused. And why are we taking the extra step to like fornicate with these people? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, let's pause on that. Like, let's just not do it. I just don't get why that has to be a thing.
The use of fornication. I don't know why.
Fornicate. Don't fornicate.
Smile.
Don't fornicate with racists. Jesus Christ. And I also get, because I feel like women too, I know it's harder for us, but like, let's just stop engaging with people who are like also like homophobic.
Mm-hmm.
And say really sexist things. Like, let's stop. Like, I know it's hard out here. I get it, but like, let's just not do it. Like, it's just not cute. But yeah, you can't just like fetishize Black people for fun and then, but you're like silent now, like Kim Kardashian. It's like, okay, but you have like 4 Black kids running around. Like, the police aren't going to remember who St. West is. So I'm sorry, they're just not. Like, if he comes in contact with the police, what is he going to do? Call you? Be like, Kim Kardashian's my mom. Like, he doesn't care.
And they'll probably think he's lying, so.
Exactly. So just remember that. And our last point we want to do was just shout out current allies. I guess I'll go first. I do appreciate people reaching out, like we said, and not in terms of like the white guilt kind, but actually reaching out to see how we're doing. Reaching out, I just want to say, don't just do it in a time of pain. Do it in a time of like uplifting too. So if you see like, someone made a good point about this, if you're seeing like, don't just highlight Black voices in a time of like pain like this, like highlight them when they do something major, like they're the first valedictorian or something. Like, it's just, we don't need the sob story all the time. We can also like uplift our voices during positive moments too. Yeah. On a regular moment. Yeah. And positive moments too. like, I do appreciate if you took the effort to ask simply, how am I doing? A lot of people at work, I am really proud of my job because they did make an effort to check on me and realize it's a hard week for me. And it wasn't just them like, we should do it. It was actually really genuine, and I really respect that. I also am really happy because they are really making some major changes now, and they actually took my suggestion on giving to the Black Visions Collective. So we are donating to that organization, which I thought was super important because they also focus on trans Black lives, and it's Pride Month, and I just think that's really important. And it's really awesome that they took like an assistant level person's opinion and actually made the effort to donate. I think it's like $1 million. I don't know. It's something big. So I do appreciate just things in my job and my personal life where people are making an effort to do better, to do the research and not just ask, Kia, what do you think? Like, and just simply ask how I'm doing. So I think it just is so simple, but it goes a long way.
I just want to say thank you to all my friends who have been reaching out recently. You know where you know who you are. This episode isn't about you, so I'm not going to list your names. No shade.
Sorry, y'all.
Shade, but I just don't feel like giving all that.
It's what they should be doing anyways.
It's what you should be doing anyways. And I do want to take a moment to say that, like, I'm hella proud of myself because I'm going through my social media and all I'm seeing are allies and people of color. There was one day where I was particularly angry and I was frankly looking for a white person to go off on Facebook, and it was really hard to do. So I've been doing the personal work over the past, I would say, like, decade, because we all know that this has been going on for way longer, but it's been heavily filmed and heavily brought to light on social media over the past decade. So I personally have been doing that work of deleting ignorant and stupid people when they do ignorant and stupid things on social media. So I scroll through my timeline and it's hard for me to go to war with a white person now because all the white person I follow are allies.
Do you guys feel like, I was a little shocked with, because kind of like you said, like, I feel like Black Lives Matter has been on for so long, and I do feel like I was just surprised that people were like, oh, people on my timeline, because I'm like, I've cut out all those people like 5 years ago, like when the Black Lives Matter started. Like, so I was just a little confused how people were like now realizing like people from their hometown are racist and all that stuff. And I was like, I'm actually genuinely surprised that you guys, if you just didn't make the effort or see it before. Because like you said, I was like looking on Facebook and I didn't see anyone that I was friends with that said any stuff because I had deleted you.
It's that because of COVID-19, everyone has been forced to look at their social media more and to pay attention more. And I think before, Black people were brutalized and killed by police, and you could just forget about it. You could go about your day, go to work where you're not looking at your phone, hang out with the homies when you're not looking at your phone, and maybe the time spent seeing what's going on in the world is only maybe during your commute or when you're eating dinner or something like that. Now, because we're all home more and because we're all probably looking at our phones more, we see what's going on. I don't think people have had the opportunity to check out like they have over the past few years.
I will also say I made this point with my friend from high school, and I said, I know it feels almost like Black Lives Matter is like a trend now, and all these companies are saying it now and making all these donations, but like, I will never forget, like, in 2015, when I was, and everyone who knows me, like, I've been talking about Black Lives Matter for as long as it started, and you could go back to all my socials, and you could go back to my donations, and you can go back to everything, because I don't need to, like, put a black squares so you know that where I stand. You already know where I stand. You know who I am. And I feel like in 2015, it was actually very isolating. Like, I didn't have this podcast. I was still, technically living in a small town, still at college. And I just remember feeling like almost like I was crazy for saying Black Lives Matter because people just weren't posting it. It was only Black people. And it felt like people made me seem crazy for posting it and doing all this stuff. And I'm just going to say that I won't forget who was silent back in 2015. I'm not going to give you a pass for talking up now. I will remember that you were silent, these companies that are just now donating, I remember who's silent back in 2015. Don't think that we don't remember how you guys acted when the beginning of Black Lives Matter started, because I think everyone wants a pat on the back now because you donated 2 mil, but like, you were very complicit. And imagine how much further this movement could have gone if we actually had you guys speak up. NFL, you ain't slick. You're not. Just gonna say that.
And also the fact that they didn't even say Kaepernick's name, like, I think is very, very telling. But like, for the allies that, you know, I want to give a shout out. I don't want to give a shout out for like the way you have properly handled yourself during this moment, but I want to give you a shout out for all the moments before when you facilitated conversations about race, and being a Black woman with me. Because I think, you know, it's telling of people who will bring up those conversations with you, and not just like ask you, but like say like, I want to know, like, tell me. And I think those are some probably most of the informative conversations I've had with white people, particularly white women. I've never actually had that many conversations with white men about that stuff. But I just wanted to, like, you know, say you guys have been like doing the work and having the conversations from a long time ago. So it's not surprising to see how you've conducted yourself during this time. So yeah, just like shout out to those people, and also to the people who I knew were down for the cause, but like are down for the cause in a way of just like going out and protesting every day. I have one friend who I've been telling him to text me like every night just to make sure he gets home safe, and he's been out there like all the time doing the legwork, you know, talking to people, and it's just like, man, it's good to see, to have that confirmation, like you guys said that, you know, you've kind of cleared your lives of like the people who weren't down for the cause, and for just like for people to keep on showing out.
Yeah, I also want to say thank you to the allies who are also protesting and also calling out people who are racist, calling them out on social media. And a celebrity that I think people should follow and take notes from is Amanda Seales. She's always been for the cause. She's a great person to learn from. She also has a book called Small Doses that's out currently. So if you want to learn about what's going on with Black Lives Matters and, you know, what it is to be Black and how you can educate yourself, I think you should follow her on social media.
Amara, wait, I feel like, do you like Amanda Seales?
No, I think so.
Your face was just like...
No, I think I've so my feelings with Amanda Seales have always been like back and forth, and it never has anything to do with like how, like, what she believes. I've always thought like Amanda Seales was down for the cause for Black people. My issue that comes from Amanda Seales is particularly as it relates to her podcast and when she invites people onto the podcast, and I feel like she doesn't give them the space to contribute fully to the conversation. That's my one gripe with Amanda. But I know she's down for the cause. She's always been posting things. She's always been very vocal about, you know, what it means to move through the world as a Black person. So I do think she is. I mean, she's better than people going after, like, people listening to Sean King. Like, I think
I didn't know people would still do that.
Yeah, white people will grip onto Sean King like he is the only life raft, and I'm confused by it.
Mm-hmm.
They're confusing. Do we want to read the listener responses to what an ally means to you?
Yes, we can start with Twitter.
Okay, let me bring it up. Sorry.
I also have to bring it up on Insta because I put the question out on our so-called Oreos page, but I also put it on my personal page, and I got some good answers there too.
So I'll read from my personal. Someone that will have your back and can be trusted. Someone who speaks up but can listen and engage when they mess up. Someone who recognizes what makes them get defensive and explores why that is. Someone who can really listen and is willing to learn and grow. That was my personal Insta. And on Twitter... what the fuck? Sorry. It's me posting to Target to pick so-called Oreos for the influencer marketing. I'm sorry, guys.
That's
I don't
okay.
know why
I can go to my personal. For whatever reason, it's
Okay.
not showing up on the so-called Oreos podcast. So that's unfortunate because I do know someone put a really good answer there. But for my personal, when we asked what makes a good ally, someone who I actually shouted out earlier said empathy in action, and I think he's clearly showing that he is a good ally. Someone said a good ear, and another person said education, courage, and responsibility. And I thought those were all good responses.
That's
Okay, I found the Twitter one. Donating, shopping, Black owned, having difficult conversations with their circles and other spaces on our behalf, protesting with us, etc. And then another response was being open-minded and listening, willing to educate themselves, not hitting Black people with microaggressions, and not all cops are bad, and I don't see color. That's a good one. Not all cops are bad. Shut up.
Not the point.
Like, we don't care.
Do we want to go over the spotting your own racism questions that Janae posted?
Yeah, for sure.
So this is just a quick checklist. My sister, we're going to call her Dr. Jasmine Price. She's not a doctor, but she teaches a college class basically helping teachers that are usually mostly white understand their own racism. And she was on one of our episodes in the past, which was very, very funny. One of my favorite episodes, not because it was my sister, but because she is hilarious and very well informed. So she gave me a little checklist, and then she has a little blurb after that I'll read. But here's a checklist. Do you think these things are racist? And as a white person, if you're listening, I'd just like you to ask yourself these questions. Do you think white people socializing with only white people is racist? White people never discussing racism, is that racist? Calling people who do or say racist things your friends, is that racist? Standing by silently when other white people say slurs about people of color, is that racist? Like I said again, these are just little questions to ask yourself. The answer to all of these is yes, these are all very racist things that if you are complicit in, you are being racist, whether you are standing by silently or only socializing with white people. But I think this is a good way to examine things that you need to change. Jasmine, her little note was, it doesn't matter what color you are. You've been told that racism is just one group of people being mean to the other based off of skin color. That's not what racism is. Racism is a system that allows white people to maintain control over the power and wealth in our society while keeping everyone else from having equal access. Everyone contributes to the bolstering and reinforcement of the system of racism, but white people are the only ones who benefit from it. So,
thank you, Dr. Jasmine.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Jasmine. Also, shout out that she was on our education episode. So if you have time, listen to that. It was it's definitely one of the top 5 episodes we've produced as a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next segment, time to talk mental health. And I saw this post on Instagram from Rain X Shine, and I thought it would be helpful for today's episode and what we're going through. So here are some self-care tips for Black people feeling overwhelmed by the media. 1, set boundaries. You are not obligated to share your feelings or educate people on what we are dealing with. 2, indulge in Black creativity. Seeking out Black art and celebrating Black joy can respite from traumatizing media coverage. 3, be tactful about your daily scrolls. Not every post, tweet, article, or message requires your attention or response. A constant intake of appalling footage can be overwhelming. 4, feel. Remember that your feelings are valid and take time to acknowledge them. Anger, sadness, fear, all justified. And 5, connect with other Black people. It is important to seek support and comfort from others that you can trust. Okay, and lastly, Janae with the shits.
Ding-a-ding-ding. So Carrie writes, "Hi guys, what would you do if you were in this situation? The other day I was in a client meeting with my entire team. During the meeting, my boss suggested to our client that we keep socials quiet so as to not seem inconsiderate or tone deaf while protests are happening since George Floyd's death. She suggested that our client post something that was about the movement instead. The client responded basically by saying that it seemed like the movement was slowing down, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal if we post about the company, and followed that statement with a joke about all lives matter, which was not funny coming from a middle-aged white man who is the CEO of a tech company. My boss, also a white woman, seemed shocked and made a quick comment about how that wasn't very funny and moved on. I, as the only Black woman on the team, was immediately uncomfortable. But I didn't feel I could speak up as I'm currently in an entry-level position and I generally don't know how speaking up about these kind of things will affect my livelihood. Following this meeting, one of my white coworkers reached out apologizing for our client's behavior, saying that she was ashamed that she didn't speak up when things were going on. Being just kind of frustrated and exhausted, I replied back by saying that I was basically disappointed in the conversation and that it's time for white people to start speaking up about these kind of things. By the end of the day, my boss organized a meeting to talk about the client meeting we had. She gave us a list of resources for how to get involved with the Black Lives Matter movement and let us know that if anyone feels uncomfortable, we can walk away from the client. Here's my conundrum. This client is an asshole and was before this call, but the work we've been doing for his company is in my area of expertise, an area we rarely tackle. And because of that, I've been getting so much shine. Like this client alone has helped bolster my resume so much. Do I walk away from an opportunity to do great work that has helped my career, or do I keep working for an at best ignorant, at worst racist middle-aged white man whom I don't respect?"
Mm-hmm. This is the frustrating thing. It's that like so often Black people are forced to choose between their livelihoods and making money and upping their resume, and also simultaneously supporting racist people. It shouldn't be either or.
Yeah, it shouldn't have to be. I personally, this was something that a friend and I were talking on the phone about, and she asked me about, and then I was later like, "Are you okay if I put this in the episode?" And she's like, "Sure, go for it." And the advice that I gave her was that, it seems like you get this opportunity few and far between, but it will come again. Mm-hmm. And she had also voiced that this guy, treated women not that great on her team too, that, her boss is a white woman and he's constantly talking over her in meetings and he's just a dick. So my advice is that if you don't respect him, don't work for him. And especially now that you have the opportunity to just walk away without anyone questioning why, I would walk away and then keep an eye out for an opportunity similar to the type of work this client is giving you in the future. And also have a conversation with your higher up about why you're walking away and why walking away shouldn't be a thing and why walking away has some cons for you and why this work is important to you. Mm-hmm. So that's what I said.
Yeah, I think you have to recognize where your morals sit and what is valuable to you. I know a lot of people, I'm not going to tell you to not work for a company and say things if you're really concerned about your job. That's just how I operate. And I know in my heart that a big reason why I lost my job is because I spoke up. I know, it's not rocket science. But at the end of the day, it's like I'm happy to speak up, and I'm not gonna live my life working with a group of people or a company that doesn't sit right with me in my heart. I'm not gonna go to bed well. And if that means I don't have a job, then I know it's easier said than done, but that's just how I operate. And I know it's not common, but I think you just have to realize what matters to you and what you can reasonably do. I mean, I don't have kids or a family, so I get to operate in a little more selfish aspect. But yeah, I think it's does working with a company that values you and your opinion mean a lot to you, or are you kind of like okay with it?
Yeah. I think it was happening slowly before, you know, everything, for me at least, I think was kicked off with Ahmed Aubrey. I keep on messing up his last name. I don't know why I keep saying Aubrey or Aubrey, whatever, you know. But I think people are starting to realize that money is not as important as we've been taught to believe it is, and that at some point you have to choose between money and your morals. And like Janae said, another opportunity will come around for you to shine. It may take some time, but like, how are you going to feel about the work that you've produced for someone that you know is problematic? And will you feel comfortable promoting that work knowing what you know?
Yeah. And you know, no matter what the decision is, there's absolutely no judgment, because at the end of the day, if you do decide to keep on working for this client, you're getting tons of opportunity off a shitty white man. So you're winning then too. But I think it all depends on what you can work with and what makes you feel comfortable and good about yourself.
Yeah.
So the shit's out.
Release it.
Ew,
Well,
Amari.
That was funny. I liked it, Amari. That was funny. That was relevant.
Yeah.
Janae, you're the one talking about pooping. Like,
Right. Janae was last episode was like, we ain't friends if we're not talking about shit.
come on now.
Yeah, you guys are right. I do talk about
And your segment is called The Shits. So.
But like, it's like the shit's like the stuff.
Oh,
I still like it, Amari. I think it's on brand. I like it.
Every time I read it in our Google Doc, I just think of the shit emoji.
I love that emoji. I haven't used it in a while though, even though it's relevant to the conversation now.
Yeah. Well, that is all for today. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. Follow us on all social media at So-Called Oreos, and you can email us at socalledoreos@gmail.com. Also, fill out our new survey. It's on all of our social media. Help us help you. You can listen to us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. And please remember to like, rate, and subscribe and leave a review. Until then, bye.
Bye.
Bye. I was muted.
It's so late.
Oh, God.
Hi, everybody. I'm Key.
And I'm V.
And we're the hosts of We Shouldn't Talk About This.
Key, there's a lot of things you shouldn't talk about.
I believe it.
I decided to make a little list.
Oh?
Yes, let's see. Parachute sabotaging, cults, biodiesel fraud, poisoning innocent people, and burglaries ending in death. Just name a few.
That is a terrible list of terrible things to talk about.
I know, it's so awesome.
Join us every Tuesday as V and I tell each other a different true crime story based on the topic chosen by you, the listener. We Should Talk About This is streaming on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and other popular podcast apps. So gather around, listeners. It is time for a tale of crime.